This video will detail my first attempts at making trails on the property. As you can see through this video clip, it's very thick, mixed forest with what we call canebrake out here in eastern North Carolina. Building trails on the property is a big priority. It's also going to be one of the most ongoing projects. I want to build a trail system that allow me to access most of the property. I'm going to start by cutting single track trails, then expand them to four-wheeler size trails, and ultimately to trails that you can take a four-wheel drive truck down, so that I can pull materials like wood and tree trunks back and forth for additional projects. The clip we're watching right now is slightly deceptive. It appears that I'm walking between trees pretty easily. In reality, most of the property is an incredible tangle of vines and undergrowth that makes it truly impassable. You can't take more than a few steps before it's impossible to move forward. I'm going to make a video a little bit later on the actual trail cutting process and techniques that work best, as well as the tools that I use. Coming up, you're going to see a Google Map view of the trails that I want to cut, including a perimeter trail and some clearings. This perimeter trail will be about 0.6 of a mile, again according to Google Earth. The first thing they accomplished was getting a parking spot cut in. This allowed me to get off of the main road and start working towards the interior of the property. When I first started making trails, all I had was hand tools. I started off with a brush blade and a machete and a couple of shovels. As you can see here, using a brush blade is pretty inefficient and exhausting in 100-degree weather. I eventually upgraded to an electric hedge trimmer, which ultimately burned out under the stress of all the material. Once I got some brush and trees cut down, I needed to get it out of the way to move forward, so I attached a tow strap to my trailer hitch and pulled it all to a burn pile. After that, I decided to put a gate up to prevent people from taking advantage of my newly built trail system with their ATVs and tearing up my progress. I went to Agri Supply and bought all the materials and made a day of it with my son and my wife. I continued upgrading my tool set and started using a four-wheeler and a chainsaw to cut down larger trees further down the path. You can see here it's pretty loaded with the tools that I'm finding most useful. Eventually I bought all the protective equipment after getting struck in the face several times by loose vines. I eventually created a clearing 30 to 50 feet in from the main road that allowed us a place for some camping and hanging out. You can see when it rains a lot though, things are starting to get muddy. Unfortunately, my newly built trails started getting slick enough where two-wheel drive trucks were starting to get stuck back there. Here's my brother trying to get out on some really slick mud. After some creative winching, we were able to get him unstuck, so we decided we needed to do something about the low spots. Here's me having a little bit of fun in my truck, but ultimately it led to getting stuck even with my four-wheel drive. One afternoon, I managed to get myself stuck when nobody else was out there, so I spent about 3 hours slowly winching myself backwards, tree by tree. It was definitely a project, so I decided we needed to put down some mulch because it was a free material available at the local recycling center. My brother came over for a work day, and we moved several trailer loads of mulch onto the wet and low spots on the trails. This definitely helped, but it wasn't perfect, and it involved a whole bunch of work. The idea is we got it filled in enough where we could continue down the trails and continue working for the time being. With the newly improved walking and driving surfaces, Davis was able to get around a little bit more easily. The next step in the trail making process is to deal with all the cut trees. We started piling them up for a big bonfire. Even Davis got in on the material collecting process and helped make our big pile for the bonfire. The plan was to have a bunch of people out and do it as kind of a party or cookout, but unfortunately we couldn't get everybody's schedule coordinated, so I had to just do it one evening on my own. The pictures don't really do justice to the scale of the pile of material we had, so I was a bit tentative to burn it all at once, so I pulled a little bit off of the big pile at a time and burned it slowly. I didn't want to start an uncontrolled fire on the property, but it did make for a relaxing evening hanging out. After all the trees were burned, I now have a pretty open meadow connected to several trails. It's about halfway into the 20-acre plot, which I feel like is a pretty good accomplishment, but not nearly done. I've got a whole bunch more trails to cut, but I'm feeling pretty good about the progress we've made so far. I'll upload more videos as I get further along.